Welcome to Notes from the New Heaven. Join me, Reverend Sage Cole, founder of the Helen Keller Spiritual Life Collaborative, each week as I share different doctrinal truths of the new church that ground my life, that inspired the life of the great Helen Keller, and that create a portal for the new life that so many of us long for. This week, Jesus and the divine humanity. I decided to offer my reflections about Jesus and the divine humanity here in my kitchen sink, here in the heart of my home, to ground me in the heart of my humanity, which is at the heart of what I want to share about who Jesus was and is, and what it means to consider and live into a divine humanity. Now, the new church that I am a part of and that these videos are inspired by is also understood as a new Christianity. One of the books that Emanuel Swedenborg wrote was called True Christianity, and he saw his insights and wisdom as seeking to bring to the world a renewed understanding of what it means to be Christian. And I don't know about you, but I'm guessing you may also feel that the world needs a renewed understanding of what it means to be Christian, and that renewed understanding is actually coming into being. I certainly see so many signs of it, really beautiful people doing good work to transform and shift what it means to be Christian. Because so far on the planet, after a couple thousand years of people attempting to be Christian, we've seen a lot of poor execution. Right? We've seen the church become indulgent and materialistic. We've seen the church become violent and oppressive. We've seen simplistic understandings of Christianity, that it means saying the right words and appearing the right way and then finding salvation. We've seen the church be really a deeply oppressive entity in the world on huge scales. And I certainly know in my time being on this planet, to name that I'm a Christian has sometimes been a hard thing to do, because people immediately assume things about that because of the way Christianity has played out thus far. What I want to share in this message is that when we really read the scriptures, when we really listen to what Jesus said and how Jesus lived and what message Jesus was seeking to convey, and then when we also add to that the insights of Emanuel Swedenborg and the insights of others who have embodied the Christian message, we see that all of this harm, all of the ways the Christian church has harmed humanity, is really the antithesis of the message that Jesus was seeking to bring. And this was on Swedenborg's mind when he had his revelation and sought to share and renew. And it's still on our mind right now. How can we renew and create a true Christianity? And I'm just going to share a few points that are meaningful to me when I seek to live a true Christianity. One is to really get that message that Jesus embodied and lived in pretty much every teaching he offered, that he was seeking to show us that he had come from the divine and that we come from the divine too. Much of the long perversion of the church has been setting Jesus apart from humanity, and or setting Jesus apart from humanity and then lifting up kind of an elevated class of priests and high officials that kind of mediate the love of God through the church. And this is a distortion. Jesus in communion, in the offering of washing his disciples' feet, I mean, so much of Jesus's message was him embodying this divine life and seeking to wake up those around him to recognize they too carry within them this divine life. And that's really important. And so for me, to have faith in Jesus, to have faith in the divine human that he manifested in the world, is to love my divine humanity, is to honor the sacredness of my participation in life. And I find that deeply profound and meaningful. And it's helpful to have the embodied life of Christ as an example of what that divine humanity looks and feels like. Not that my divine humanity needs to look just like what Jesus did, but that I also can live into the fullness of who I am called to be in the same way that Jesus lived into the fullness of who he was called to be, and that is being faithful. That is what it looks like to be a faithful Christian. I also am deeply moved by the understanding that humanity is a sacred divine thing. Right now in the world too, just let alone the perversions of the Christian church, humans, we've been we've been causing some trouble on this planet, a lot of trouble, and I spoke about that in a previous video on heaven and hell. We cause a lot of problems. And sometimes it's suggested that we should be eradicated, right? That we are scourged to this earth. And to have the example of Jesus, who offered up an incredible, beautiful depiction of what the human can be, right? The powerful, transformative power that the human has is this ability to, again, see our connection to the whole and to live from that in ways that are peaceful and loving and caring and compassionate and justice-oriented and transformative. And I think that's really helpful and important right now when we are seeing a lot of our faults and we are seeing a lot of the ways we've gotten wrong. It can be tempting to say there's nothing good about the human being. And Jesus showed us that there is actually something very, very good about the embodied human being who loves others. That simple act of loving one another actually has these profound effects on the world. And I am inspired by that. It makes me feel good about my ability to love, and that love is not for nothing, that it's actually incredibly important and alive and real and something that is uniquely human. And I guess lastly, I would just share there is something so profound about Christ's crucifixion and resurrection, that Jesus walked this walk, embodied this love, manifested this love in the world, showed us that we too can manifest this love in the world, and was killed for it. And through his crucifixion, there is this profound invitation for all of us to recognize that part of embracing the Christ life, a part of embracing our full humanity, is to experience our own crucifixion. It is to die before we die, to realize that the impulses, the selfish impulses that he showed us we can transform, will need to be transformed. There's no way around it. That the divine life is in us just as much as it is in Christ, and for it to be fully experienced and released in the world, we are going to go through something, right? And Jesus went through so many things, wandering in the desert, his baptism, and then his persecution and his death, and did not abandon that love, did not abandon that divine life, even as he faced all of these external physical challenges, and had a huge impact on the whole world, even though his physical life was cut short. And that we too have that kind of impact, have that power, and that our impact and our divine life is not because we avoid suffering or we avoid the challenges of being human or we avoid pain, but it's actually through walking through it, through facing it with our minds and our hearts fixed on this higher life. So those are just a few of my reflections on Christ and the divine humanity. I look forward to diving in more deeply to this conversation in the fall, and I'm curious what reflections you have on Jesus. Blessings, friends. Thanks for tuning in. And if any of these truths particularly speak to you, I hope you'll join us this fall for some larger conversations that I want to hold, because I'd love to hear your experience with them. These truths only are true insofar as we live them, and I'm so excited to hear about your experience. Many blessings, friends.